This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 61. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we're back. It's Monday. And we're going to start things off today with news from Telly, who's here helping me out today.
I'm back. Good to be back on the podcast. So, what's going on in our Freeheel Life world? Well, we are skiing. We are chugging along, getting you guys set up on some new stuff, fixing the old stuff. From my standpoint on the retail front, things are starting to sell out, which is...
That's good.
A good and a bad thing, right? Good for us. If you're looking for something, hopefully we've still got what you're looking for. Off the top of my head, I know TX Pros are starting to run low. That's been our number one seller this year. Super popular boot. I think that's going to be, for most people, that kind of checks all the boxes, but I think I'm out of 24.5, 25, 29.5, and 30s. So those are both on the far ends of the bell curve of small and large, but better get on it if we're thinking of upgrading, because when they're gone till the fall. Ski-wise, some limited skis left. With the vole stuff, we can always do a special order if they have it in stock. Their warehouse and manufacturing facility is about 15 minutes from our storefront. So if you're not seeing something on the website, don't hesitate to give us a call or shoot us an email just to double check. You know, it may be sold out. It may just be not sitting in our storefront, but we definitely will be willing to work with you to get something put together. Demos, we've got our full demo fleet up and running. New this year, we had the Scott Voodoo boots in our NTN demo fleet. So if you've been a Garmont person or a Scott person and thinking about the NTN conversion, swing on by. We'll get you hooked up with a demo setup.
Retail news from Telly.
Retail news. Sorry, that's what my world is. I revolve around the Telemark retail.
No, that's good. I think other news is nothing too crazy. Midwest Tellyfest is coming up the February 12th, 13th, and 14th up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan at the Porcupine State Park. And Telly will be there.
I'll be there. First time.
And we're excited about that. And maybe we should get Keith Opperman on here to talk about Tellyfest soon.
Yeah, he could do a little promo for us.
Yeah.
He's obviously more familiar with the event as the organizer, but...
Yep. So this is going to be Telly Tay's first time to the Midwest. So you guys need to welcome him with all that Midwest nice that you guys have cooked up. So we'll have more on that, along with other events coming up. Is March 6th will mark World Telemark Day in 2021. I mentioned this last week, but be sure to plan on going telemark skiing on the 6th. I'm going to put a logo out here pretty soon, and you guys can plaster that wherever, and we will be talking more about how to participate. But like I always say, you can go. I think it's episode 6. You can go back and listen to about World Telemark Day, what it is. It's basically just go out and telemark ski and celebrate this fabulous international holiday that we schemed up many, many years ago. And that's pretty much it. So I don't think I have any more news. Do you got anything else you want to
I'll just remind everyone about the King of the Heel competition going on.
Yeah.
We are working on an edit. So we'll get something going for you guys. We can't be a sponsor of the event and not participate in it. We feel an obligation to do that, and we got a good crew of skiers here. So excited for that challenge. It is definitely a challenge on some content creation, but we always love to, or at least I always love to do all the video and photo stuff just to get you guys stoked on telly skiing. So it's a big challenge book, but if you aren't familiar with that event or that video competition, telemarkcolorado.com. They did it last year, and the winners of that, which Josh has had on the podcast, the Ham Dog 2069 crew, they killed it with the edit. So they set the bar high for, if we're trying to take a title this year, we got to step up.
I hope you're the one doing the editing, because
I'm pretty sure I will be.
Yeah, I guess we are going to do that. I'm glad you reminded me to mention that. And apparently, because what's the challenge that's like, come ski with me, but I have to have like a cane or something? Old Man Madsen
Well, there's
challenge?
a couple. They were chirping Josh pretty hard. There's a couple challenges revolving around Josh. One, there's a challenge if you just get to go ski with Josh. There's a couple other legendary Telemark skiers, Ty Dayberry, JT Robinson, Andreas Webeck, couple others on the list that you just get points for going and skiing with them. But the Old Man Madsen challenge is ski a entire day with canes as ski poles.
Oh, okay. So that one's not skiing with me, but that's
that's just pretending to be an old man.
Do I get bonus points if I myself do the Old Man Madsen challenge and ski with canes?
Maybe. I don't know. I still think they're giving you a hard time. You're not that old.
No, I'm not that old. Shout out to Telemark, Colorado for making me sound way older than I am.
Yeah, come on. My grandfather's 88 and still dropping knees, and he's not walking up to the mountain with canes.
I wonder if I've got an idea. I'm not even going to bring it up.
All right, I guess we're teasing that to you.
I just came up with it in my head, my own mind. I just came up with a sweet idea to get bonus points. All right, well, so today we're just gonna kind of shoot the shit and catch up with Telly Tay, and so really the news segment's really just gonna flow into the main segment, and then it'll just be over, and you guys are hopefully gonna be stoked because we're just gonna talk about Telemark as always, and Tay and I had a couple minutes to hop on and do this today, so I thought that'd be a good little catch up. So I was trying to think about what's going on, and I don't even remember the last time we did. I guess was it Dosti?
Yeah, I think we were talking about gear with Dosti, and that's always fun. I still think we should put a warning on those episodes of you have to be an incredibly nerdy Telemark skier to get down with all the gear breakdowns and stuff. That don't take offense to that if you are incredibly nerdy Telemark gearhead. We are too. That's that kind of environment is cultivated at the shop a bit. But I don't know what we've been up to. We've been skiing, so that's been fun. Utah is not setting any records as far as our biggest winner yet, but the skiing has been really good. So that's been super cool. I've been skiing a lot with the whole shop crew. We got a really, kind of ripping crew this year. So that's been fun. Josh has got up and skied with us a handful of our now kind of traditional Monday shreds as we've shifted our shop hours to just do Tuesday to Saturday this year. So that's been fun. I mean, we've been hammering out bell to bell Sunday, Monday, and then everyone just comes into work Tuesday morning, kind of worked. We're limping around the shop a little bit, but that's been super fun, like shredding around with the whole crew. I think the energy of the group environment, especially all on tellies, is super fun. Maybe some of us are not as lucky to have that group where sometimes we're rolling deep. I mean, we've been rolling with like a 10-man telly crew at some point, which gets kind of crazy. Like sometimes it's a little easier to cruise around the mountain with like 2 or 3 of us and everybody's kind of on the same page as far as pace. But when we get to ski with other Telemark skiers, it's super awesome because we get to I get to watch how people ski certain lines and see the mountain and pick different areas to make turns. And I think the other guys would probably say the same. Like you just kind of get to feed off each other and push each other, and it's fun. Like T2. So if you guys don't know T2, if he's probably helped you in the shop this year or maybe answered a phone call from him. He's a young kid. He graduated high school in May and had been kind of asking Josh and I for a job the last couple years. And the stars aligned and he drove his truck out here from New Hampshire and we got him a job. And the kind of Western skiing is kind of new to him. He's definitely a bit of a park rat. I think that's kind of what he was attracted to skiing at home. But now we're kind of showing him the ropes in, I guess, the more big mountain skiing is what I guess I would call it, or that's kind of what we like to do. And I don't know, it's been fun to have him like picking my brain about technique stuff. I think, for me, when I first started working at the shop, I had tele-skied since I was a young kid, but I never really skied with like a whole crew of tele-skiers that were trying to just push each other and push themselves and kind of push each other as far as our abilities and, how fast could we ski a line or how tight could we make turns there. So it's super fun to, kind of share that with T2 and, give him a few pointers. Like, I think we've talked about this in the past. Like, I certainly think there's core fundamentals of good telemark skiing, but I think there's a lot of style involved. Some of us stand in a slightly different position. Excuse me. Stand in a slightly different position, or like to make tighter turns or faster turns, and I think there's technique that goes into making, if you're flying down the mountain making more like GS style turns, that's at a different speed than, if you're doing what I call B-mail skiing. Brian Mail has been on the podcast. He is a super tight and fast, like really hoppy type technical skier.
He's older than I am too.
Really good skier though. Really good skier.
No, really.
And he's
he's gonna hear this and be he's gonna be like, dude, you're totally blowing me up. Anyways, I'm just pointing out that you can be older and still get down. Like B-mail crushes it. So
yeah, it's like, it's fun because, as I've skied with other people and kind of absorbed their styles and techniques, it's fun to be able to share that with the other guys. But, Josh has been getting out with us, and I think it's a lot of fun for the other guys to kind of see Josh's style and technique. Josh has been doing it for a long time. What was the year you started teleskiing?
93.
Okay, so you have been telemark skiing 1 year longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
So you've got a few more days of experience on the mountain.
That's why I'm good off the couch too, because I know all you guys are like, oh, Madsen never skis anymore, and I pride myself in my technique that I can come off the couch and still manage to keep up. For the most part.
Sure.
So
that's
good.
That's been fun. And like, I guess going back to T2, we initiated T2 recently. So if you're not familiar with our initiation process, part of working at the shop is not only one, kind of learning where our sport has came from. Like obviously Josh is big into the history aspect of the sport, and our shop is kind of covered with essentially a museum of old telemark gear. So, like T2 is way younger than the plastic boot even. So it's like, when he started telemark skiing, it was like on T1s and, vices or switchbacks or something, like a very modern 75 millimeter setup. And we got him out on the famed Europa 99s, which Josh has tattooed on his arm. And we've got 3 pins, and he was in real low top lace ups. One of them was in a solo snowfield, and then
so you gotta explain. So T2's feet are different sizes, so this is unique, and he actually had 2 different I don't think they were both the solo snowfields.
No, we couldn't find
we couldn't find a matching boots.
So he had one pair of Alpinas, which I think were really more Nordic boots, because like they had a 75 millimeter 3-pin toe, but the duckbill wasn't the same. I wonder if the shape on the duckbills of those, like the Telemark duckbill, was maybe slightly longer or something that maybe got you a little bit more leverage, because it was like a real short, like 75 millimeter toe. But either way, he had mismatched boots, which is totally his style. I don't think he's ever owned a pair of matching boots. He's usually got matching boots as far as like he has 2 pairs of T1s, but one of them is the newest generation, and one of them is an older, probably like 2010 T1 or something.
What size? I always forget.
He wears a 24 and a 26.
Which is bigger? Which is the 26?
Right foot.
Okay, so we're looking for someone out there that has a 26 26 left foot, and the right foot is a 24.
Yeah.
If you're out there and you and T2, you guys should hook up and start like a boot co-op with each other.
Yeah, you guys can go in on boots together.
That way you only have to buy one pair of boots, and then you guys can flip-flop the sizes.
Yeah, that would make his life a lot easier.
So, yeah, just 20. You need a right-footed 26 and a left-foot 24 Mondo sizing. And then, email podcast@freeheellife.com. We'll set up the exchange.
We'll connect them. There must be some Telemark skiers out there with different size feet.
If this actually works out for him, I'm going to be incredibly impressed.
Oh, it'd be so awesome.
That would be amazing.
But so going back to his initiation day, so, when I started working here, initiation day basically was, well, I had never skied leather boots. I started on a Garmont Teledactyl, so a plastic boot and a cable binding. My dad started on a solo and a 3-pin, and, was telling me all these stories of skiing, baldy chutes on 3-pins. And, I just thought that was cool. And then meeting you, you wanted to really kind of share that experience with me so that I could talk to people in the shop. A lot of the people that we talk to in the shop that are old time tele skiers, it's like they started on 3-pins and, now most of them have probably transitioned into more of a modern equipment, but it's like, it's still fun to just have that connection with that sensation, like of trying to put yourself in that frame of mind of what was it like to be a Telemark skier in the 80s, and what was it like to be a Telemark skier in the 90s on maybe a either burlier leather boot and a cable binding, or a early plastic boot. And so we kind of started that tradition of initiation where you kind of had to understand that. And I mean, props to all these guys. Like last year we initiated about 4 or 5 guys maybe that were first timers with us. And then T2 was kind of our next wave of new recruits to get initiated. So props to those guys, because I think they did better than I did my first day on leather boots. Like, at least my perception is I really struggled with it and have spent enough time now to feel fairly proficient on them. But
you got pretty good pretty fast. But I agree. I think the early, when you took your dad's setup out and kind of what became the initiation, because it was more like, hey, Tay, you should take out your old leather boots. Like, yeah, exactly how you were explaining. I think the initiation concept kind of came later, but I mean, you got good pretty fast. But that's always the best part, is even though everyone's got the perception now, because now you can go like watch last year's vlog with Pebble Creek with all the guys, like T2, at least you can still look and go, hey, I know what I'm in for. But remember, and we've maybe mentioned this, but the initiation now, you do not get a warm up. And so the best part is always the first turn, because everyone always 3-pins and low top leathers. And I don't know if anybody's really survived the first turns.
Yeah, it's definitely...
There's a shock value.
It takes them a little bit to adjust to it, because it feels so different in the sense of you just don't have that support from a plastic boot and a solid binding, like, and it's just funny, like, my perception as a younger Telemark skier, like, I think it's fun to see the new guys try to kind of adapt more of a modern style to the old gear. But like when I watch you hop on 3-pins, it's like you kind of almost like revert back to like kind of a more traditional technique that, one, you learned on 3-pins, but 2, you learned from, a traditional book that was written when that was kind of the era of equipment and the technique. So it's just kind of funny to watch that. Like, I like that kind of technique aspect of things where, watching Josh ski those, it's like he kind of reverts to more of a traditional technique with, some double pole plants and I don't know what do you call it, like a step turn, kind of when you get that drop knee ski kind of angled in and kind of let that swing around as you kind of apex the turn a little more.
Yeah, I think it is called, like, I need to look that up, because I think there is like an actual stepping technique, but more or less what you're doing is, unlike unlike initiating a turn where you just step forward and kind of use the side cut of the ski to turn the ski, you're almost like triangulating I vividly remember this when I learned is it's almost like you jam your foot out forward and then like the inside, the uphill ski, you're almost putting the point of that ski near your boot and then swiveling it around. It's very, if you go on our YouTube channel and watch like the old Dickie Hall videos, like that guy's a master of that. Like one of these days we'll get Dickie on this podcast.
It sounds like you've been trying to track him down.
I've been trying to track him down, dude. Hang on. I realized while we were talking, because you brought up the double pole plant, and then I was like thinking, I posted that video of me skiing on that gear. Let me just side off this real quick with the double pole plant thing, because I love that you guys are all, our YouTube channel, it's going off. We're having a good time, but I love the trolls.
The YouTube comments are a double-edged sword.
I'm trying to find it because
it was on that when you were skiing with the 50-pound sandbag.
Did you read this comment?
I think I read it, but you read it again. I don't remember word for word.
I'm trying to find it real quick. Hang on. I was laughing because, oh yeah, here it is. Let me see. And we love all you guys. All the comments are great. But yeah, so yeah, I was skiing. I had a couple hours, and so I threw a 50-pound pack on my back, and I was skiing these old XCD Carhoos. And I was trying to find. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but I was laughing because they were talking about using kids poles. I think you could improve your turns. I'm not going to read this. I don't want to throw someone under the bus, but this is what I was going to say. Just in case you are watching any of these vintage videos, the tall poles 100% are a more traditional way of doing it. And I'm talking like, I think those ones they're like 140.
Yeah, they're long. I mean, are they like a Nordic pole? Do they have that little weird Nordic grip on it?
Totally.
Yeah.
They're Nordic poles. And so like if I'm really trying to go super trad on it, like the Nordic poles are great. But I'll tell you, it helps with the double pole plant. But it actually makes the double pole plant useful because you can reach out further in front of you. And so someone else commented too, because there was a video. Oh, because I think it was in the initiation where I had the long poles or something. Oh, we didn't put that up yet. Anyways, but then I was using shorter poles. And then the other part that was funny is people were commenting like, you're using too new school of a style with the shorter, or too new school of style, not need to ski enough on the vintage gear. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. People pick up on that.
I think that's fun that you guys are picking up on. You can see the technique of a skier. But I think that, I don't know, that's kind of funny. Like my impression when I hop on leather boots is like, I definitely have to make some adjustments, but I find my quote more modern technique, I guess you just say taller. Like I'm not really a low skier on like my NTNs, but it's like, I feel like that standing a little bit taller kind of gives me suspension both ways, where if I have to absorb terrain or bumps or something by going down, I can, but I can also come up too. Like if you're knee to ski, if you like doing that, I'm not going to tell you not to do that because that's your style. I don't want to change your style.
Thanks for putting that in there, because people are going to be like, you hate knee to ski.
I'm not going to tell you not to do that. I'm just saying I don't think it's as efficient, because if you're all the way down, you can't go any lower. If you're a little more in the middle, then I feel like I can use my legs more as suspension with travel both ways. And so like going to the leathers, it's like, I think I have to ski a little bit lower on leathers anyways, but I still try to give myself some of that buffer where I have the ability to, get into my telemark stance and then go lower if I have to, absorb the terrain. And I don't know, it's just really fun. But
the knee to ski thing, I mean, so this is a good question, is why is the knee to ski thing considered proper technique in old school gear? I mean, this is a good question, right? Because everyone's always like, you're not low. I mean, we hear this all the time because people are transitioning, right, from like older cable bindings. And what's the first thing they always say?
I can't get low enough.
I can't get low enough. I mean, and I was thinking about this the other day when I read that comment. It was like, oh, you're skiing like really upright. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. And I'll be the first to say, when I was a teenager and I was first starting to Telemark, I loved getting low. I thought it was so cool. I can't remember who I was talking about. It might have been Keith from the Midwest. I don't know someone that's been doing it for a while. And I mean, even when I was a kid, we would always like go across the cat track and just need to ski it in a Telemark stance, any cat track.
Yeah.
Just for no reason. But it brings up this point. I can't go low enough. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, why do we always think about going low on old school gear? Because I agree with you. Now in 2021, even on old school gear, I still think it's not as efficient from an energy standpoint. I'm not saying don't do it. We're on the same, me and Telly Tate are on the same page. Style wins always. I'm not going to tell you have to do in the box Telly turns. But with that said, it does burn more energy to go lower. I mean, it's like, I think we can all agree on that. You go low, then you go high, up and down, up and down.
There's just more motion. Like, your muscles have to make a longer, they have to stretch out longer, and then you have to push more energy up to get up through your lead change.
You're going to get smoked faster. I think you agree with that, right?
Yeah.
But why? So what's funny though, is I started thinking about, I'm like, why did we all go low? And I think here's what I'm proposing this as an answer is, we only went low because we could go low. And what I mean is, even skiing old gear, which you know me, I'll go ski all this old gear from whenever, and I've started, and there is a time. Here's the one time I think where need to ski works is like if I'm skiing those leathers and I really need to like try to control a situation, I might go really low. Like when I was skiing in that manky powder on that video, on that 50-pound video, I was like, that was the only way to control it. Because if I try to go parallel on old gear, then you're for sure.
That's way scarier because on a low cut boot, you don't have a back seat. And on a 3-pin, you don't really have a front seat either because you have the soft flex of a leather with no cable. So I think maybe going low, it brings that center of gravity down closer to the snow surface, which could provide some stability.
That's what I'm saying. There is a time when you can utilize it, but the idea of going knee to ski, what's interesting is it takes pressure off the ball of your foot on the uphill ski. Because if you take your knee past that 90 degrees, you're then going more up on your toe.
Yeah, for sure. You're almost, you can on a 75 millimeter 3-pin, like you're almost up like just on the duckbill. Like even the tip of your big toe is like coming off the ski.
Yep. And so then you're literally controlling the inside ski with like, a half inch of your boot.
Yeah.
So just that was my thought on not just vintage gear, but even the gear that we're transitioning people from these days is there's not necessarily, I'm just, this is my challenge to all of you out there, because I used to be, I loved getting low because I could get low. Like that was like an identity thing as like a 90s Telemark skier. I was like, oh, I get low.
Yeah.
And nowadays I don't go low to not go low. I just, I propose to you out there that maybe you don't need to go low. And funny enough, we can ski some pretty hard stuff on that vintage gear and not go that low. I don't know why. So it brings up an interesting point about like, why did people go low?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just interesting to think about the historical, technique, if it's changed. Certainly there must have been some more tall stand-up type telly skiers on more vintage gear. But I think, definitely that perception is like, go low, or you get the flow because you go low. Or there's some little like go low and flow saying, like I've heard that from people, and I don't know. I guess ultimately it comes down to the fun factor. If you have fun, low smoking, as my dad and I call them, you're a low smoker if you need to ski. If you have fun doing that, I'm not going to tell you what's not fun.
Yeah. This is not a stylistic conversation.
No.
By any means.
But I think, that technique of, on that, I just think it really comes down from having maybe more support with gear allows you to be in kind of a mid to high telemark stance easier. But I also think it's just, I don't, like me personally, I want to give myself the most room to, use my legs as suspension and absorb the terrain. It's like trying to maintain that control over my center of gravity and balance means I need to be able to adapt because, every turn on the mountain might be different snow conditions. It's different terrain. Maybe there's a tree, there's rocks or something in the way where it's like, I have to be able to move my body to apply forces to my skis to, get me where I'm going kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just funny it's just funny to see, and we appreciate all the YouTube comments. At least it makes us think.
No, I just, they make me laugh sometimes because I'm like, I'm not smart enough to think that people actually are going to comment on it. And then there's like all sorts of different ones, but the technique warriors are the ones that crack me up the most.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just fun.
So pick me apart.
It's fun to, you can, take that last few minutes as you will, and if you got an opinion, you can share it. Well, that's fine. I
was gonna say, to give T2 his moment of glory with the initiation, let's give a quick recap of how that went, because basically I totally took your story. You like seeing, I think I took it from the point where you're like, I like to see the younger guys put their modern spin on the old gear.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for sure for T2 though, he did revert to that low style. Like, I mean, he got into some of those turns, like, and so Fred's Trees, if you don't ski Alta, it's an awesome place for initiation because it's relatively steep, usually bumps, and it's directly underneath the Collins chair, which is a high-speed quad that, is probably one of the most popular lifts on the mountain. So
mandatory.
You get hoots and hollers from people like, asking like, what are you guys doing?
I added the call out this year too, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Basically, he had to yell at the lift and tell everybody he was the best telemark skier and then drop in.
Yeah.
I think I stole that from that's like a NAR point thing.
But. Yeah, I think so. But he, he dropped in, he made a couple turns, and then as soon as it started to roll over and get a little bit steeper, he was falling and, kind of did a scary slide down towards some trees. But, he got it together. And, by the time we got down to the bottom of Fred's Trees, it was, he was linking a couple turns together, which was cool to see. But it was definitely humbling for him, which I think was good. Like... you just gotta...
You're just trying to keep the man down.
You gotta keep him in check a little bit. And the funny thing was, too, is... So Josh was on leathers. I was also on leathers. And our friend Elliot Gore was on leathers that day. And Elliot and I and Josh obviously have competed in the smelly knee pad several years. And Elliot and I...
Tay's the champion, by the way, everybody.
Josh has one under his belt. There's still some controversy about that.
Tay still beat me, but whatever.
We Elliot and I wanted to kind of intimidate T2 a little bit because he was on super low cuffs, and Elliot and I brought out cable bindings, and Elliot was on a pair of Merrill Super Comps, and I was on a pair of a Solo Extreme Racers, which is a 4-buckle plastic cuff boot, and it's like, I mean, that is way easier to ski on.
I like that you guys thought that far ahead, that like something that's going to happen in April, you guys are like laying groundwork of intimidation tactics ahead of time.
Yeah, I got to show him what's up. I got to make sure he knows that he's got to start training.
This is how serious we take our leather skiing, by the way, everybody. Like, and for those that don't know what the smelly knee pad is like, we came up with this event where we go to the top of High Rustler at Alta, and this is like the last day of the year. And we have an arbitrarily judged, usually the judges are intoxicated, and then they judge us with like a 10-point score each.
Yeah, 10-point score, so 30-point maximum.
Overall impression.
Overall impression, whether you had good style, technique, threw a trick, had an epic crash,
I'm worried. See, we might be letting too much out of the bag with cause that's the problem. It's like YouTube changed the game for like kids doing tricks. Cause then you watch stuff and then you get good, right? Cause you're like, oh, like a 360 is no big deal to anybody. Now, see, we might be creating future competition.
Yeah,
for
if I'm not
ourselves.
holding another title in April, maybe we initiated it too soon. Maybe we shouldn't have let him on it until late March or something. But
that's funny.
Yeah, so smelly knee pad is 200 centimeter minimum. I think we say 70 millimeter maximum underfoot. Is that our rule?
I think it's like 60 or 70.
We should probably make sure that those are written in stone.
You guys
somewhere.
can tell that we're serious about not being serious.
The one question that came up too is risers. I had the guys at the shop asking me if risers are legal. I think they're more concerned about booting out.
I say no to risers.
No to risers. Okay.
I don't think we'd have to go do some digging on that, but yeah. And I would say, because we don't allow G3 Targas, and that would have been like late 90s.
Yeah. So,
pre that, there wasn't really risers. I think it has to be on the ski.
I mean, all the older skis that we have kind of in our, collection that we can let these guys ski if they need. I mean, they're all mounted just straight to the ski. I mean, whether they're just a 3-pin or a cable binding, I mean, they're just mounted straight to the ski. I don't know that we have anything that's like 200 plus from that era with risers on it. So I guess maybe maybe not.
The only thing I can think of that might have come up at some point was the Vole Alta shim, which is kind of literally looks like a little pizza shim that went under the toe, but that was for the boot jack.
Oh yeah, the wedge, like the wedge.
The wedge.
Yeah.
Vole had that little wedge that went under the 3-pin toe. And just real quick, this is the wildest podcast.
We've just been talking about leather boots.
I know, literally, we're like, what are we gonna? Let's just catch up, and then we literally talk about leather skiing. But real quick, if you don't know what we're talking about with risers, this is your history lesson. So on those so we used to just mount the toe piece and the heel piece straight to the ski. If you guys are old timers listening to me and you're like, yeah, no shit, I get it. But for the young people, you mounted it straight to the ski. But the problem is when you get on the steep terrain with these narrow skis is you do like what Taylor said, you boot out, meaning you almost have like these little wings hanging off the side of the ski because the toe of the binding is wider than the width of the ski. So when you angulate, the metal of the binding toe hits the ground. Well, so that's where risers came, that little plastic piece that goes underneath the toe piece.
Yeah, so it brings you up off the ski, maybe 10 millimeter, 20 millimeter, something like that.
So
which
you can
then
angulate.
Yeah, which then gives you that ability to get that ski up on edge more before the binding is going to dig into the snow.
Hard no. No risers.
Hard no risers. It's settled, which makes the high traverse getting out to high rustler probably the scariest part because you're on a steep slope on a traverse and you can just feel that binding just digging into the snow the whole time.
It makes me wonder if we made like a low top, so you can use like Merrell Super Comp boots currently, but it makes me wonder if one day we'll have to relegate to low top leathers with no cuff.
Yeah, that'll separate the men from the boys, I guess. No, I don't know. That as of now, our rule has been, Super Comp like boots are approved. To
put it in perspective, and then we should move on to something else because people are probably like, "Dude, you guys suck."
Sorry, we like nerding out about old retro gear.
Well, the only thing I was going to mention about T2 has been initiated. Welcome to the family. But right after Tay was talking about him getting to the bottom of Fred's trees, is his literally his toe of his boot broke off.
Yeah, I forgot.
So I ended up with literally a 3-pin sole. So not the midsole didn't break, but the Vibram literally was so brittle on these old boots that I have T2's toe in my pocket, and then it wouldn't fit in the 3-pin. So we made a shout out to Vole straps because I made a Vole 2-strap cable binding on the 3-pin, and he continued his initiation and made it to the bottom.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good. So Vole straps are a ever useful tool. Freeheellife.com. You can get them with the Telemark skier or the Freeheel Life logo.
Plug, dude.
Come on, dude. I'm trying to sell. Salesman over here. So yeah, T2 had an awesome day. He's initiated and he did a complete penguin slide down the entire Shush Gully as we got down to the base at Alta, which I did my first day on leather boots as well. So shout out to T2. Yeah, so I don't know. On another note, as we transition out of our leather and smelly knee pad conversation.
Like 40 minutes into it.
Sorry. So
hope you guys dug that.
My first day back then, so we did initiation day on a Monday shred, and then I skied leathers Wednesday afternoon just because it was fun. And so Wednesday's my day off. I was skiing leathers, and then Sunday was my next ski day, and I had not skied plastic boots since, Monday at noon. So it was almost a week before I had skied plastic boots again. And I hopped onto my NTNs, my Outlaw X's, my TX comps, and a kind of stealthy looking ski that I've been riding on. Just throw that out there. You can make of that of what you will, but it's a one-off and it is so easy. Like I've called the leathers and 3-pins kind of a training setup before because it's just so demanding from a technique and skier perspective that, I hopped back on my NTNs and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so easy. I'm like the best skier ever. Like,
is that what you tell yourself?
I tell myself that all the time after I hop off leathers and onto NTNs.
I like it.
Just like ultimate power steering, but just like charging. And so that was, it's fun to just go back and forth between that stuff. I think the one really hard thing is though, it's hard to go. Like if I start the morning on NTN and then like finish the afternoon on leathers or something, if I swapped at lunch, I can do that. But on the same day, I cannot go from 3-pins to NTN. It feels like so much stiffer that it's like I can't like relearn how to ski because I feel like every morning I get up to the mountain and I got to figure out how to ski again. But I can't make that transition going forward in technology in the same day. I can only go backwards.
I think that's why it's hard for, like, we always talk about the transition to new gear in general. And like, I think why our shop, I'd like to think we've done a good job of sort of systematizing to a certain point of how to get people, again, we don't care if you buy new, quote unquote new stuff, but we want you to make sure your gear's functioning. But when you go from an era to an era, it's difficult. Like you said, it's easier to go backward than it is to go forward, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that makes, that comes into play a lot when we are, getting someone into a new setup. You might have skied your, let's just say T2s and Targas because that was a super popular setup. If you skied those for like 10 years, like that is just ingrained into your brain of how you need to pressure boots and bindings and what type of positions you like to be in. And so, changing stuff can be intimidating or difficult. I think it's easier for people to make those transitions if we're upgrading, more recently. Like my dad is a perfect example of a guy that started on 3-pins and leather boots. And then, he got a pair of the Asolo Extreme Racers, which is the pair that I am lucky enough to ski every once in a while. And then as soon as the Terminator came out, he went to a Terminator, and then he went to T-Race eventually, and then he, went from Targa to BDO2 because BDO2 had, a little more power with the underfoot cable routing.
There you go.
And, then it was, he transitioned to a newer pair of T-Races and a Vice, and then was, willing to make that jump to the NTN. So it's like, he's open to new technology, but it's like he kind of went through almost every generation of stuff. So I feel like his ability to adapt to something is a little bit easier. And, he was in his late 50s, I think, when he first got onto an NTN setup. And, so if that's you out there and, you're concerned about going to something like that, you can make it work. I think, if you have skied a setup for a really long time from a specific era, that jump may be different. Sometimes I'm on the phone with people at the shop here and we're kind of behind the scenes. We kind of call them the Telemark therapy phone calls which is totally fine. I know a lot of you guys probably don't have a lot of, telemark skiers that you can talk to about equipment. So you can call us and we can talk through stuff. But, somebody that's getting their first, modern setup or first NTN setup or something, and, they might be struggling with it at first. And I was trying to think of how to kind of describe, like, how to kind of adapt to some of that stuff. Like, I'm trying to tell people to, just like have a little morning meditation with themselves and like get in a good frame of
like
mind.
Therapy.
And, okay, so just accept you got a new boot, a new binding, and you probably got a new pair of skis. So you change 3 variables at once, which can be difficult. And so, even just like get up to the lift, get off the top and just like stand there, at the top of the lift and just do a couple lunges and figure out like, how are my boots and bindings flexing? Where do I feel like I need to put pressure? Do I have to think about, pressuring the cuff of my boot more? Do I have to think about pressuring the ball of my foot more? Like go at it with an open mind so that we can kind of, accept that we've just changed 3 variables and then figure out, start to learn our new setup, right? Like if you skied the same setup for 10 years, you don't have to think about what and how that boot and binding feels. Like if you jump to something new, you got to think about that feel a little more. So, we were talking and, got this person to a good point where they were, excited to go for that next day and just, give it a shot and kind of figure out what they needed to do with it. I was able to walk them through on the phone how to adjust their binding. If they felt it was too stiff, we could back off the spring tension. I mean, I think that's one of the coolest parts about, the modern gear is that it's so adjustable where it's like, you and I could ski the same binding, but we might have different preferences in boot flex. We might have different preferences in springs. We might have different preferences in spring tension settings. So, there's a lot of customization going on. But, we were trying to, like, I was sitting around with some of the other guys at the shop and trying to talk about how I think about that stuff. And, I think for me on the NTN, I feel like it's maybe depends on the setup, but I think in general, it might require maybe a bit more energy out of a skier to get into a telemark position. But then I feel like the more energy you give into something like that, you have more kind of energy stored up to drive that ski. And not that you always have to be a super aggressive, like powerful skier on a modern setup. But I think that, that's my feeling of like, if I have to give my boot and binding more energy to flex it, I can get more out of it. So for me, that's a good trade-off. Like
that's interesting because what the first thing I think people are going to think, they don't want to put energy in it. They want neutral.
Yeah.
But that's the go back to the need to ski thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so interesting about it is like, I think a lot of people don't want to put anything into the binding, which is why you get people literally. That's why I did that podcast. What is telemark skiing? Because I think these different eras, those really neutral setups, people then go try like an Outlaw X.
Yeah.
And they're like, this isn't telemark. You've heard that a million times.
Yeah, for sure.
This isn't telemark. Going back to the YouTube comment, that one I sent you yesterday that said like a couple bindings destroyed all telemark equipment or something. But it's like, no, but it makes me, I was just going to point that out as, I think you nailed it is I would like to see even more adjustability in the future. We have good like Outlaw X, Majo. Majo has probably the most combinations of all of them.
Yeah.
But it's tech toe. So then people are like, I don't know if I want to do the tech toe thing. Although, spoiler alert, there might be something else out there. Anyways, coming in the future, but more adjustability and options. I think it would solve a lot of these problems. Is we're trying to we don't have a lot of boot binding combos right now. And so, which is fine because what we do have is amazing. But oftentimes I'm wondering, I'm like, what if you could adjust an Outlaw X, I'm just using that one, or a Majo. What if you could adjust it to feel literally like a G3 Targa?
It'd probably be a good seller because the G3 Targa is probably the number 1 selling telebinding of all time, and there's a lot of those out there, and people, get used to that feel, and that seems right in their head. And, that kind of loops back to of like, the style and the personal preference. Like, that's okay if you don't, I think a lot of people, if they hopped on my setup of TX comp, power blocked, booster strap, like as stiff as I can make that boot, a stiff spring on the Outlaw X, a stiff demanding ski. If you guys hopped on that setup, some of you might think that's very overwhelming, or it feels like you're locked down. But for me as a skier, it's like I can get so much power out of that setup that when I'm making telly turns, I feel like I'm just putting so much energy into that it's like I can get so much out of it. And I guess, yeah, that's, for better or for worse, depending on, what you're looking for. But I think, at the end of the day, it's like a leather boot is very demanding from a skier in the sense of it doesn't give me any support or take any energy. My muscles are what is making a telemark turn in that sense. But it's like it's more demanding kind of over the course of the day because my muscles are just constantly engaged, but it takes more energy per turn maybe to initiate on like my really stiff, powerful like setup. But I think at the end of the day, I'm less tired. So I guess that there might be some give and take on that. I don't know if I really have a clear point as to, I'm not telling you what's right or wrong, but I'm just telling you my thoughts of, I feel like on the modern gear, it maybe requires a little more energy from the skier up front, but it kind of saves me energy in the long run.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it. What energy you're putting in, you're getting out. I mean, it totally makes sense. Yeah. Like I can get on your setup. Yeah. Can I ski it? 100%. But then like, I've been gravitating towards like a softer boot.
Yeah, that's not really like your style or preference.
No, but it's funny because it was at one point.
Yeah.
And I changed too. And I think that's where maybe why I always harp on this idea of what is Telemark. And I laugh a little bit. I kind of giggle inside my brain when people say that, because I'm sort of like, it's such a narrow way to look at it, is because if you're a leather boot guy and you say G3 leather boot and 3-pin, and then you got to G3 Targa and Terminator, and you're like, that's not Telemark, which of course people did when you went to plastic boots. And then when you get to NTN, now NTN is not Telemark. I mean, honestly, when everybody starts being on NTN gear and we just call it Telemark, I really wonder what people will fight against anymore. Because there's like, what's the,
yeah. I mean, yeah. What does define that? Like, in your most recent podcast about what is Telemark, it's like, you're talking about how, these Norwegian guys were kind of searching for more power and more control, with coming up with the, heel binding that was basically looks like a cable binding,
right,
where you have a piece of whipped, is it birch?
Yep. Birch.
Yeah. You have, birch branches or twigs or whatever, yep, that are whipped together and come around your heel to give you more support. And these guys were doing jumps and stuff. So, like, I think that's probably just a kind of an American thing of, the resurgence in North America was through Nordic stuff, because yep, that was Freeheel gear, obviously on Nordic stuff that, then they were able to adapt the Telemark technique to that equipment. So it's just interesting because, like, if that's your perception of what it is, it can be hard to maybe accept an evolution or a change of something. I think like the kids that, like, I have a friend, Greg, he started telemark skiing, when he was in his kind of early 20s, and his first setup he owned was NTN.
Oh, so he's never even been on 75?
He's never even skied a 75 plastic boot. Wow. And so that's kind of an interesting perspective. I mean, he accepts that a leather boot is also Telemark, and a plastic boot and a cable binding is also Telemark. And, you've indoctrinated him well, I guess, but it's just like, it's interesting to see that kind of perspective coming from, certain eras. Like, obviously we are, accepting of all eras of telemark skiing. And I think that's fun. I own low top leathers. I own, 2 buckle leathers. I own 4 buckle leathers. I own 4 buckle plastic 75 millimeter boots. I own TX Pros and TX Comps. So it's like, maybe I'm an anomaly of like, I have a very broad quiver, like boot ski binding, that's all kind of different. And I appreciate all the, minute details of each different type of setup. But it's like, I look at an NTN and I say, yeah, it's Telemark. It's, the Facebook comment I see all the time is NTN stands for no Telemark never.
That's so ridiculous.
Like it, yeah, I think it is. I think that is super ridiculous.
As we're talking about it, and I mean, this is what's so funny is, I mean, you make a good point with Greg. I mean, and people are always asking us, like, how do we grow Telemark? Well, what do I always say? Make more Telemark skiers.
Yeah, 100%.
So, but the funny part about that is, people coming to Telemark through Freeheel Life are going to be on NTN equipment. This is why I always say NTN, I think we're pretty close. Well, kind of. I mean, it might take a while to fade out, but at some point we have to call new Telemark norm Telemark because it's like 15 years old.
Yeah, it's like, how new is it?
I mean, what are we going to do? Call it like 30 years from now? We're going to be like, NTN, new Telemark. No, it's like every binding that's being made is NTN. It's just like, call it a Telemark binding. But what it reminds me of is, and I'm not a car guy, Travie B, we probably should have, I should have him talk about this, but it reminds me of cars. Cause like when I was, in high school, like muscle cars were big, like 70s muscle cars.
Yeah.
That's those were like the big boat cars that like were hanging in the grandma's garages back then. And so all the high school kids were like in auto shop and they're like, I'm going to, rebuild a muscle car. But if you think about any of those, whether it's a muscle car from the 70s or like you're into 60s Corvettes or Mustangs or a Model T, like, you don't have a Model T and drive it around.
And you tell the guy driving the Tesla down the street, that's not a car.
That's my point. It's like, it's so silly. And I get it because honestly, it's like, if you look at alpine skiing, it's like in the last 30 years of alpine bindings, like what's going to be different? Nothing. It doesn't create a different sensation. Like an alpine turn is pretty much an alpine turn.
Yeah.
I mean, a Christiana turn.
Yeah, I like that. I like that call out of calling them Christiana turns. I think that's an important part of having that in your Telemark quiver, but
I think it is. It's like the car thing. Like exactly. You made you made the point. It's like, yeah, and I wouldn't have thought even Tesla, but that's even better. Model T to a Tesla. It's like literally like, one, if you want to try and grow Telemark skiing, quit sitting around Mr. Tesla dude and start yelling at all the old people that are driving the Model Ts. I mean, you're not going to make new people that way. I mean, that's what's so weird is like people literally sit around and argue about this stuff. And I'm just like, really? It's all Telemark. One guy likes to drive this car. One guy likes to drive this car. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
But guess what? I'm not going to hand a Model T to someone that's learning how to drive. I mean, hell, you guys your age group barely knows how to drive stick shift. I mean, you're like one of the few kids your age I know that knows how to drive a stick shift anymore.
Right. That's definitely interesting. Like, as someone new is going to get into it, like, there's not a rule of like, oh, you have to start this new sport on this old gear or, the Targa, that's the binding to start on.
I've heard that a lot.
It can be a great setup to start on. Like, in our consignment shop, we sell a lot of used gear that can be a great way to get, if you're looking to get into Telemark, it can be a great way to get into it at a cheaper price point where you're not taking a big risk in the sense of, okay, I'm going to spend $700 on a boot and $400 on a binding and $700 on a ski. And next thing you know, you're like, okay, am I really like committed to this thing that I don't know if it's even fun? Like, it is really fun. So I think you can get there. But like, if you can score a pair of old T1s for $100 and, a pair of K2 Super Stinks with Targas on them for, $80 or whatever. If you're into that, like $200-300, it's like, okay, that is something that at least you can get out there, start learning the technique, and then, okay, I like this, now I can upgrade. So, start on whatever you will, but it's all Telemark.
Yeah. Well, and if you get old stuff, it's just, again, going back to the car analogy, like if you get an old car, expect to have to do repairs on it. Expect that it's going to feel different, like it's like the power steering thing, which I don't think any cars don't have that now. Have you ever driven a car, you old?
No, I've never driven a car without power steering, no.
I mean, that's funny because, when there was still cars with no power steering around when I was, learning to drive. I mean, yeah, we don't even right? Like, we don't even think about that now.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember gas stations that had leaded gas. Shout out Telemark, Colorado. I am that old. No, but it's like power steering. I mean, it was like legit hard to turn the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like funny to think like that these things exist. I don't even know where I was going with that point. I think we made the point. Like, if you're going to get into Telemark, like if it's a financial thing, for sure. I mean, that's why we sell used gear that's less expensive, is get into it. But yeah, honestly, I don't know. To be quite frank, I can't imagine how Telemark managed to grow and stay around in those other eras with cable bindings, because I mean, think about being a shop and trying to get people out the door, adjusting cables and like shortening cables and lengthening, and they're not the right size.
I know, our life is so much easier when I do a demo for someone and what size boot do you wear? 26. Here's a small. Go ski it. It's so much easier.
Those are the types of things that are going to grow it for sure. If we do our job of getting it, to people. So,
yeah, for sure.
That was a fun little rant.
Yeah, I don't know. We can go all over the place, but yeah, it's fun to just talk about that stuff and kind of air out those ideas. And you don't necessarily have to think like we do, but we do want to let you know how we think about stuff. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, this was good too. Like I worked out. You brought up some cool stuff. Like I think just working out, like putting the power into stuff, and maybe just it was good. It was a good little talk on stuff. Hey, real quick. So if you don't subscribe to the YouTube channel, go subscribe now. All the video content's going there. YouTube/Freeheel Life. But Telly Tay's got his own thing called The Lowdown every Wednesday. So it's Monday today. So if you subscribe, you'll get that notification on Wednesday. And what are you talking about this week? We are talking about knee pads. Perfect. We'll just tease it out with knee pads. The myths and the truths behind knee pads. Is that what it's called? I didn't come up with that good of a title when we scheduled it out, but that sounds good. Sounds good. The myths of knee pads. Yeah. I have a lot of fun on the Lowdown. Just kind of a weekly video of me checking in, talking about, I don't know, just whatever. I mean, I've talked about anything from owning a leather boot to, what to look for when buying a new gear, what's the deal with Tacto NTN, all over the place. What's my personal quiver look like? And, if you guys are liking that stuff, like, please, like, throw some comments, throw us that, little thumbs up on YouTube. Makes us feel good. And, the comment section is great. Like, if you guys got questions about stuff, I'm more than happy to, like, I'm looking at those comments. I'll respond to those comments. And I'm more than happy to, next week do another video about, something that you guys are asking, or at least get it into my queue of what I want to talk about weekly. And that's a lot of fun. We also got Craig Dosty doing Dosty's View tomorrow. It's fun to get, Tuesdays. Fun to get his perspective on what's going on and all sorts of stuff. I mean, he's definitely more talks about gear stuff specifically. That's kind of his realm of having, written about gear and done gear reviews in all the career of magazines and web reviews and blog posts and stuff like that. But I think it's fun to, I like to watch those and kind of get his perspective as a, more of an older Telemark skier's perspective and a backcountry Telemark skier's perspective. And then Josh on Mondays. So Monday afternoon, Freeheel Life Weekly gives us a check-in as to all things going on in the shop. And then we started some new tech videos with Wyatt, our head ski tech here at Freeheel Life, kind of walking us through simple repairs and stuff like that. So that'll be good to have just in case, you don't live here in Salt Lake City and we cannot fix your binding right then and there for you. At least we've got a video to walk you through if we get you some parts or something like that. And then we're working on, just as always, like little video edits, little stoke stuff, just to keep, more ski content. So we're always shooting videos, and I'm working on editing some other stuff together. So if it's not out already, it will be coming soon. I wrapped up a little edit from kind of December 2020. Just whatever we shot skiing with all our friends is going to be fun to see. I'm pretty stoked on how it turned out with, whatever snow conditions we got that day. So it's kind of a month-long compilation of skiing. And I got T2's initiation edit coming out soon. So lots of content. We're having a lot of fun kind of putting a little more time and energy into the YouTube page. So we appreciate the subscriptions, and it's free to subscribe, and you get notified about what we're up to. So if you want to stay up to date with what's going on at the Freeheel Life, YouTube is a good place. All the other social medias are a good place. Our mailing list is a good place. Basically, we're trying to make sure that you can get a hold of what we're up to.
On that note, sign up for the mailing list. Link is in the notes. Awesome. This is good to have you here. Thanks for being here, dude.
It was awesome just to chat.
I feel like we got deep. I actually learned some good stuff today.
We didn't know what we were talking about today. Sometimes we have a plan more of like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about today. But we just let it flow today. So we went deep on leather boots and wrapped it up with modern gear and some technique talk and cars. I don't know, whatever else we talked about, but hope you enjoyed it. And thanks, Josh, for having me on today.
Always, brother. So like we said, most of our content's free. Really, if you do want to support the podcast directly, you can always make an extra donation of your choice at paypal.me/freeheellife. Otherwise, please shop for your Telemark gear at freeheellife.com. Taylor and the crew is running the shop, and they're doing an amazing job this year, and we appreciate all you Freeheel lifers out there and all the support. New articles, telemarkskier.com, and the YouTube page, like we said, is YouTube/freeheellife, Instagram, Facebook, and even our Facebook group you can find under Freeheel Life. And we're always popping in there with more of this content. So if you want to get a hold of me directly, email me at podcast@freeheellife.com. And thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have a chance on Apple Podcasts, if that's where you consume this, take a second and rate and review the podcast and let us know what you're thinking. And until next week, spread Telemark always, my friends.